Welcome back to Fi Friday Feedback. I hope that you enjoyed episode 4 of the Fi Crash Course, where we talked about one simple equation. If you have not had a chance to go back and listen to Monday's podcast, I highly recommend it. So you can start here for a quick recap before heading back there. And this way, at least you get a fun viewer mailbag and some win of the weeks to get you set up to learn. Dominic, what did you think about Monday's conversation?
I loved Monday's conversation. Monday's conversation is always iconic. It's always original, and I love it. A lot of interesting stuff was said. And if you didn't go back and listen to it, I highly recommend checking it out. We talked a lot about the gap. I'm not going to explain that one right now. That's a secret. That's a Monday secret. We talked a lot about living with intention. We talked a lot about living for today while planning for tomorrow, and really why and where all your money tends to go, and how most of Americans really are living not just paycheck to paycheck, but they're barely getting by. Very interesting podcast. I think it simplified a lot of the questions surrounding how to become financially independent, or at least the first steps in going over that. And that's part of what we're going to be going over today, as well as a viewer mailbag, which I'm super excited for. It's going to be a good one. A very happy viewer mailbag, enlightening viewer mailbag today. So I'm excited to share that one with you guys. But yeah, Chris, where should we start? Where do we start on this journey for Friday's episode?
Yeah, first, I kind of want to talk about why do we as a society, why do professionals, why do people make the system so complicated? Like if you want to be financially independent, you need these 20 steps. And and each step has 16 subparts, and it just becomes this convoluted mess where when we say, hey, it's actually a really simple equation. It's this minus this equals this. And people are like, that can't be that. It can't be that. It can't be that simple. I need to make it more complex, because complexity is what's going to make it possible for me. Or if I haven't figured it out yet, it must be because it's so complex. I just don't have the secret, where we're trying to say like, no, it really is this simple. But unfortunately, simplicity is often like poo-pooed at. It's often looked at as like, oh, it's so simple, it's dumb. Have you ever thought like you've met somebody who doesn't talk very much, right? And you're like, oh, this person must be dumb. But in truth, the person that doesn't speak very much, that's usually the smartest guy in the room.
This person, he doesn't talk much. This person must be dumb. That's a concerning statement for me, because I was a very quiet child. That's very concerning. This guy's dumb. He doesn't talk much. He's an idiot. That's so funny. Oh my God. You made me choke on my water there. I wasn't choking on water. I was like, what? That's crazy. Yeah, no, that you threw me for that one. It's kind of interesting. One of the quotes you said last week, it fits perfectly with what we're saying right now, right? It's from Miyamoto Musashi. It's the one we always quote. It's, once you see the way broadly, you see the way in all things. And like you said, it's like, why do we have to make things so complex? Doesn't make sense, right? Let's simplify things. And then I was thinking, I'm like, wait a minute, like what else is simplified? What else is more complex that we need to simplify, and the simplified version is better, right? Say eating food, right? You're going to be healthier if you eat simpler, right? Not these, food with a million different ingredients. No, simple foods with simple ingredients, right? If you eat fruits and vegetables, you're going to be healthier, right? If you eat stuff with small, simple ingredients, you're going to be healthier, right? You go to the gym, you do your workouts, keep active. It's simple. We don't have to have super complex, nutritional strategy plus, optimized training with 6 to 7 reps. It's like this way. It's like, yeah, I mean, if you're like, Chris Bumstead, right? Or Ronnie Coleman, like, yeah, okay, high level stuff. But hey, that's not really our mission, right? We're trying to keep things as simple as possible to get the most out of life and enjoy it while we're here, because we don't know when it's going to end. So yeah, no, keeping it simple is just the best. It's the best way. It's really the only way. Complexity kills speed. Isn't that right, Chris?
I agree. One thing that I think a lot about is that we always say it, personal finance is far more personal than it is finance. You can get about 80% of the way by just knowing yourself. 80% of the way is just knowing this one simple equation. But just like in fitness, when I used to be a personal trainer, you see this all the time. Like if you want to get 80% of the way to being healthy, You need to eat right. You need to sleep right. You need to move your body. And let's try to reduce our stress as much as I can. Like those 4 pillars. And even the stress one's kind of difficult. So you need to eat right. You need to sleep right. You need to move your body. And it's almost the same thing with this equation. You need to make more money. You need to spend less money. You need to invest the difference. You need to make sure that you're working on that gap. But just like in fitness, people are like, well, rather than focusing on those 3 things, Chris, like let's talk about my cold plunge routine or my hyperbaric chamber routine, or let's talk about these things. It's the exact same thing with investing. People are like, well, rather than focusing on how much money I'm making, how much money I'm spending, and how to invest it strategically that works for the long term, what about private equity? Tell me about this new investing scheme. I heard about this cool pyramid scheme, or there's this new tracker that tracks what the top investors are doing and blah, 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 blah. Have you heard about AI? And then people would constantly say these new things to me. It's like, okay, we can talk about that. And that might get you 1% better improvement, 0.2% better improvement. But you're missing the 80 to 90% improvement that's sitting right there, like in the face, like staring at you, like you can fix all of me. You can get basically to an A or a B just by working on this. But everyone's like, no, I need that 0.1%, that 0.2%. That's what's really going to switch me up. I think that we love the complexity because we don't like how simple it is. It makes us frustrated how simple it is, because maybe if it was that simple, then I should have figured this out a long time ago. Mm-hmm. So rather than changing and then saying like, okay, I've been wrong this whole time, we just say, oh, I haven't been wrong. I just haven't figured out the right thing. Where if you just decide that it's okay to be wrong, at least thank God I figured it out now, then at 80, then I have the propensity to change. But if you believe that you're correct and you can't change, it's going to be tough.
Yeah. And another kind of way to look at it too is like, maybe you're afraid of getting to that goal. Maybe that your deepest fear isn't that you're inadequate. Maybe it's that you could actually achieve it. But then what? And it's scary because once you get to the goal, well, you can't just stop there. You got to create a new goal, right? What then? So you have to be aware of that self-sabotage matrix in your mind and in your habits, because we're kind of designed, we're living a world that's designed to make you fail, right? With, 20,000 ads a day, junk food that's engineered to make you eat more of it, right? Your phones that, it's trying to get you to be 10 hours of watch time on your phone every day, right? We live in a world that's trying to sabotage you. And you have to be aware. Before you can attack it, you first got to be aware of the issue, right? And, it can get out of hand rather quickly. Very quickly. But Chris, you had a point on this one?
Yeah, I was just thinking as you were saying that, a thought came into my mind that we live in a world, a society, a culture that almost seems to try to sabotage you. It's exactly what you said there. And what came to my mind is, well, how are they trying to sabotage you? They're trying to keep you distracted. They're trying to make you look 20 other directions rather than focusing on what's the most important thing. And the most important thing is what I control, the way I respond to what's ever going on. But if I'm never actually awake to be conscious of how I make my responses, because I'm getting 20,000 ads stuck at me, because I'm constantly looking at my phone and just kind of habitually reacting to the next thing, then I never truly get the experience to wake up and say, am I doing what's right for me? Am I living a life in accordance with my values rather than what society has shared with me, rather than what advertisements have shared with me, rather than what the newest TikTok trend has shared with me? And that's a scary place to be, to wake up and be like, holy shit. Like for the last 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, I was just doing stuff. I was sleepwalking through life. I was spending money. I was just doing what everyone else was doing because that's what I thought I had to do without ever questioning, is this what I need to do? Is this what I have to do?
And one of those skills, that we try to preach as much as possible. We didn't mention it last podcast, but we really, really, if you can learn any of these skills, one of the skills, the greatest skill that you can learn is a skill to question everything, right? And trying to understand. And a lot of people might be offended by that. In a weird way, I've actually seen a lot of people be offended when you question them. Like, well, why do you think that? Well, this is why. And you can kind of see a person collapse and break their brain, right? Why do you believe that? Well, I believe it because this, or this. And it's like, okay, well, It's funny that you say that because that's the same talking point they have on the news, or I've heard from everyone else. It's kind of like a hive mind situation. But like honestly, like what's the deeper thought? Like, what do you think about it? What do you see in it? And it's very dangerous when people don't think anymore. They just regurgitate. It's so important for you to meditate. This is why we talk about, meditation and finding your why, right? I mean, honestly, like most of life's problems would be solved if you knew who you were, right? Know thyself. We say it all the time. It's the newest version of like the Jocko quotes that we used to quote. It's cyclical. Jocko will come back. But it's funny because in my notes, I was talking a little bit faster last podcast, and I was like, in my notes, I put talk more like Jocko, like in cadences, in rhythms, and leave time to really, cultivate the right words and those breaths. And you can see it like right when I was doing it right there. But I'm gonna go back to speaking like myself, anyways. But yes, questioning everything is so important, and really becoming a critical thinker, becoming not just just a thinker. Everyone out here, I hate to say it, it might be rude, probably rude, but everyone out here is just bots. They're bots. They're just bots. They're just total bots. Or as my friend Thomas, he loves to say, he's like, they're just cogs. They're cogs. They're cogs in the operation. I'm like, honestly, totally. But that's why it's so important to develop yourself. And not just listening to podcasts is great. Oh, and this actually brings me to a wonderful point. Listening to podcasts is a great thing, right? Listening to new information is a wonderful thing. But don't just listen. Make time for the silence and really create your own thoughts around the information. So often you hear it preached when you were younger, growing up, you are who the 5 people you hang around, right? Show me your friends, I'll show you your future. And I heard this quote recently that changed my perspective on this a little bit. And it said that you're not the sum of the 5 people you hang around. You're the sum of the 5 podcasts you listen to. Because oftentimes I'm somewhat social. I don't hang around 5 people. I don't even have 5 friends. I've got 5 acquaintances, right? But people I see on a daily basis, besides like my coworkers, right? And maybe like one close friend, it's super limited. But I spend more time in the space of learning, whether that's a great podcast that I admire, or last night I was reading the 48 Laws of Power, right? Robert Greene. So it's not so much about the friends you surround yourself with, but it's around the knowledge you surround yourself with. So make sure that you're really spending time in a place where you want to go. Hey, if you want to watch Love Island, right? Soak that in, but understand, watch catty things, become a catty person. Read books on conquering and war strategies and building your mind. Well, you're going to build a mind of a warrior, right? So just be careful what you're spending your time in, because it all affects everything in the mind. The mind doesn't just choose like, I'm not going to do this, do that. No, the mind soaks it all up, and you don't know what's going to come of it. So be careful which podcast you listen to, and make sure to like and subscribe to the podcast you are listening to, because it's a good one. Anyway, I'm off my soapbox, but I thought that was kind of an interesting take in today's society. That's my take
No,
for today.
I agree with that. I've always said that a lot. You're the aggregate of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And then I've thought about that a lot of like, but if you don't spend any time with people, you're 5, like you don't have to spend with them physically.
No.
Like listening to them, hearing their words constantly, and just absorbing that is spending time. And, when I was growing up, I didn't have a bunch of rich friends to talk to ask, what do you do? So I had to create it. I created Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, Ray Dalio. I looked at these men and some women. Hopefully there are going to be more in the future. And it looks like that's coming that way, but people who are good with their money, people that were different than the norm. And I created that as my little friendship. And now only a one-way friendship, and that they just spoke and I happened to passively listen. I couldn't talk back to them, but that was able to change my mindset to see enough from them, just from listening, to be able to almost elevate. They didn't pull me up. I forcefully elevated myself just to be with them, because most of the time we don't we rise up to wherever things are, or we fall to wherever we set as our new normal. And we set our normal based off of the people we surround ourselves with. Again, physically, auditorily, whatever way that you surround yourself with. It could even be on YouTube. It doesn't really matter. But if you're setting yourself up around a bunch of people that are, I don't know, playing funny
Losers.
pranks on people,
Yeah.
or losers, and you're up here, they will pull you down to their norm. But if you are somebody who is in that place, you are not where you want to be, start to make your normal something more normal. One of the best ways, if you have like a really bad teenager, right? Like you have a terrible teenager, they're just going around doing bad things. Most likely it's because they're bad friends.
Yeah.
What we need to do, and I've think about this, is send them to like a military school. Send them to a place that the norm is higher, because they will automatically filter themselves into that. But if you keep on saying like, oh, you just can't hang out with that people, you have to try that, put them with hard people, with people that are going somewhere, and they will automatically get there. Now we look at that with a teenager. We're like, well, that makes sense for a teenager. It makes sense for you too.
Yeah.
It's the exact same thing. We are all social creatures. It's bound to us evolutionarily, and we want to fit in the group. We do not want to get outcast. It is one of the scariest things that can happen to a human being. So if you surround yourself with people that are at a higher level, you will try to fit in automatically, unconsciously, without thinking. Your game will automatically get elevated. Just like in jiu-jitsu. If you want to be better, roll with the higher belts. If you want to stay the same, roll with the lower belts. Roll with the lower belts. Or just don't show up. That works too.
There's a point in David Goggins' book. I believe it's Can't Hurt Me. It might be his second book. I'm not sure. The information kind of blends together because it's so great. But he talks about how, he was the only he was like one of two black kids who went to this high school. And he was the only in his mind. And he wanted to be liked so bad. Like he'd be the class clown. And, he'd cheat his way through school and all these fun stuff, all this terrible stuff. And one summer, he looked in the mirror and he hated who he was. And the next year he came back, rather than, class clown, pants sagging, like crazy haircuts, like shirt tucked in, hair buzzed, right? Totally different person. And one of the things that he talked about was, he's like, I had to get over my fear of being the only. It's okay to be the only. It's okay to be alone sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes, right? And I think, like you said, Chris, people fear being outcasted. But when you remove yourself, you take that power away from other people. And I think part of being more in life, part of growing as a person, is taking the power away from society and giving the power back to yourself. And I think so often we let society, which is like not even to me, it's like, it's a real thing. Society is a real thing for sure. But in the immediate, it's not really real. It's like an ethereal thing. It's like a cloud. It's like, yeah, it's there, but can it affect you? It's like, I don't know. I think sometimes we fantasize things having more power than they do. And when you take the power back, you realize, oh, you were all bark, no bite. You were a big shadow, but a small dog. And it's just like, things are always scarier in the mind than they are in reality. Would you agree with that, Chris?
Yeah, 1000%. I think too many people, they fear to look at it because they're afraid that it might be bigger than it is. But I think if you can think back in your own life, listener, how many times have things been really scary, but only by looking at it where you're like, okay, it's not as bad as I wanted it to be. Or even if it was bad, at least by looking at it, you can start to create a plan to fix it. As we close out this portion of the podcast, I want to reiterate going and listening back to Monday's podcast, because we talk so much about the gap. And that gap that we talk about on Monday's podcast, that equation, that is your compass. Empowerment through financial mastery. Mastering the wealth equation gives you financial freedom, gives you control over your finances rather than your finances controlling you. By being able to understand that simple equation and being able to widen the gap makes financial management easier, makes not just financial management easier, makes life easier. Whether you're beginning today with this being your first podcast or you're resetting your intentions, the equation that we discussed on Monday's podcast, the very simple equation, can transform your finances. And I know that it's so simple that most people are going to hear it and say that's dumb. And I feel sorry for those people, but eventually when they realize how simple the path can be, they will come back to the episode and be like, wow, he said it from the get-go and I didn't believe it. So I had to go this huge circle to come right back to the starting point. It's happened in my journey. It's happened with so many other people's journey that the simplest answer, we say that's so dumb. That can't be the right answer. I have to go find the other answer, to come around back to the center, come back to the beginning and be like, that was the right answer all along. And everything else that people said was the right answer was only a portion of that true answer.
I hope that you guys take what we're saying today to heart and really think on it and question everything. It's so important to question everything, and it's so important to really start to uncover the truths that are in your world. You know, there's not very many blatant truths. I feel like the more you look, the more you have to really uncover the truth. You have to find the truth, because everyone's trying to sell you something. And here at the Five Guys, I mean, we're not trying to sell you a course or anything like that. We're not trying to like give you your credit cards or anything like that. Literally, we just want better information to go out there. And we love teaching, and we love inspiring people, and we just don't want to see anyone left behind.
Yeah, in fact, the course is free. You're watching.
Yeah, the course is free. Exactly. Yeah, that's right. Honestly, no, that's actually, we guess we do have a course. Yeah, the Fi Crash course. That is, you got me on that one. No, you're 100% right. How can I forget our mighty course? But yeah, that is going to be my final thoughts. Any final thoughts from you, Chris, on this week's recap? Nope, all good. Alrighty then. Well, we are going into I wouldn't say my favorite, but I'd say probably second favorite. The first part of the podcast is probably my favorite part, but my second favorite part of the podcast is our viewer mailbag. This is where we give our advice. We give our feedback. That's why we call it By Friday Feedback. Makes sense. So that being said, let's get right into it. So for today's letterhead, how I escaped generational poverty. Interesting. We got a story for you today. Alrighty, boys. So this is today's letter. Howdy, Fi Guys. I know this doesn't fit what you usually share, but I wanted to write in and tell you how I escaped generational poverty. And maybe someone listening will see themselves in my story. This one's probably more for the younger crowd, but here it goes. I grew up broke, like trailer park broke. Both of my parents worked minimum wage jobs and have always been behind, living paycheck to Tuesday. I've heard paycheck to paycheck, but I've never heard paycheck to Tuesday. What does that mean, Chris?
I would assume that if you get paid on Friday, you only make it to Tuesdays. Your money only made it a few days, and now you're going to have to somehow float till the next paycheck. So I guess there is a worse than paycheck to paycheck.
Wow, that's crazy. Okay. Their parents were single moms in the service industry, and their dads weren't around. There wasn't a financial plan. It was just survival. I started working retail at 16 years old, and I stuck with it. I worked hard and said yes to every shift, every eventual move up to shift leader, and then I eventually moved up to assistant. Nice. By 25, I was a store manager at a small clothing company, about 200 stores, making around $45,000. This was back then in 2010, and for me, that felt like a lot of money. My mom passed away the next year, and with nothing really tying me down, I was open to relocating. I got recruited by a bigger retailer and was offered a $75,000 paycheck. Plus, they paid for me to move. Oh, that's nice.
Cool.
I ended up in a rough store, but I kept my head down. I hit my numbers, and I proved myself. This was around 2019, and 2019 feels like last year, honestly. Crazy.
That was before COVID, man.
That's crazy work. Crazy. Not long after, I got picked up by another company, kind of a competitor, and I made a bit of a career shift into HR and benefits. I started at the lower level, but they matched my pay. Over time, I earned certifications paid for by the company, and worked up to a more specialized role. Now I make around $125,000 plus bonuses. It's not some glamorous story. I gave up a lot. nights, weekends, holidays. I missed birthdays, weddings, and a lot of sleep. But now at 38, I'm married, I own a home, and I have a son who's growing up completely different than the world that I did. We've got a solid 401k, and I've worked fully remote Monday through Friday, and my wife stays at home with our son. That's awesome. That's super awesome.
That's so cool.
I love that. I only have a high school diploma. I didn't take the traditional route, but I made it out. And honestly, I believe I ended the cycle of generational poverty in my family. My son will never have to experience what I did, but he's still learning the value of hard work and a dollar. So, yeah, I guess the secret was 20 years of grinding in retail, saying yes when others said no, and not being afraid to move when the opportunity came. Maybe not the sexiest story, but it's my story. Thanks for all that you do. I really hope this helps someone out there. From trailer to trophies, no degree, just grit and groceries. How about that? Well, not a lot of notes on this one. That's pretty cool. That's wonderful. Well, we love people getting out of generational debt. And Chris, what do you have to say about this one?
First off, like no notes. Normally in Five Friday feedback, someone writes in asking us a question, but on this one, all I have to say is thank you for sharing. I think the story that this person wrote in, it's powerful, it's raw, it's real, and it's the exact kind of thing that people need to hear. No fluff, just truth of what somebody actually went through to get where they want to go. And what I think like hit me the most on this is that this person, it wasn't an overnight success story. It was built on grit, sacrifice, and consistency over years, over decades, honestly, to get where they want to go, which I think is so important in today's age where everyone on TikTok, everyone on social media, whatever, is saying like, oh, this is what I did to become where I want to get to overnight. It took me 10 seconds and, this AI chatbot, and now look at me, I'm a millionaire. What I love about this listener that wrote in is that they didn't wait for the perfect conditions. They took what they had and they kept saying yes to the hard stuff, to the stuff that everyone else said, I don't want to do it. I'm not going to be able to do that. Like, what about me? Why should I have to try harder than other people? To our listener specifically, to the writer of the thing, you climbed out of a trailer park with no degree and you built a 6-figure career with benefits, a home, and the peace of your family. That is legacy work. That is truly breaking the cycle. Your kid will never have to know what you went through. You put in there that you were living paycheck to Tuesday. And that's the first time that Dominic and I have ever heard of it. Like, that paints such a vivid picture of how tight things were growing up. That phrase alone will stay with me. Like, I'm going to start using that. Like, are you paycheck to paycheck? You paycheck to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? Like, where's it stop it? You didn't just survive. You moved when opportunity came. You took on tough roles, you earned certificates, and you made yourself a valuable asset for everywhere that you worked in. Something that everyone needs to learn how to do. To not realize that just because you exist, that you deserve to have everything. You exist, therefore you are a real person. Therefore you deserve to be treated with decency. But that does not mean that you deserve to be a rich person just because you exist. That you deserve to have everything that you want just because you exist. You can have anything that you want, but you can't have everything that you want. You're honest about the cost, about missed holidays, nights, and weekends. But now you've earned back your life and your time. And your family gets to live a different story because of that, because of the sacrifices that you put in. You're showing people that they don't need MBAs, they don't need college degrees, they don't need 6 figures of debt. That they don't need a trust fund to be able to build wealth. You just need work ethic, willingness to move, and the courage to just play the long game and stick with it, even when things are tough. Because I know you didn't really write about it, but I'm sure there were times where you were questioning every single day, what the hell am I doing? But now you're 38 years old. You get to look back on the last 22 years and say, all of that work got me to a remote job, a good 401k, a stay-at-home spouse, a son who will grow up never knowing the kind of struggles that you had to, but still learning the value of hard work, still learning the value of honesty, still learning the value of what money means. And that money isn't the goal, but it damn well helps facilitate whatever the goal is. Honestly, I'm honored that you share your story on our show, because there's someone out there who needs this kind of story. Someone who feels stuck and needs to just hear for one time that there is a way out. It's not easy, but it's possible. Too often in our society, the biggest issue is that people have no hope. And without that hope, they're never going to try to strive for something more, because what's the point? So to our writer, major respects to you. You didn't just change your own life. You changed the trajectory of the next generation and the generation to follow and follow and follow. This is what people mean when they say be a good ancestor. It's be like this writer. Be the person that broke the trauma. Be the person that changed everything, not just for their kid, but for their kids, their kids, their kids. And we get to choose that every single day, not just our writer. All of us, myself, Dominic, our listener, we all get to make a decision every single day, not just to be a good person to advance ourselves, but to advance society, advance the next generation, advance our kids, their kids, because you never know what small little thing that you do today can make a huge ripple and be that tidal wave of change that will change everything. If you look back through history, there are small moments, small, insignificant moments that changed the course of history. The two bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in World War II were supposed to be dropped on two completely different locations. One of them was Kyoto. The only reason it wasn't is because one of the people who was in the room that day that they made the decision went to Kyoto on a vacation years prior and really, really liked it. So he fought to not have the bomb drop there. One guy saved thousands of lives. Unfortunately, they killed other thousands of lives, but that one decision. Additionally, the one that was supposed to be dropped on Hiroshima, that was supposed to be dropped in another city, and I can't remember what it is, but due to cloud cover that day, they decided to drop it where they dropped it. Small, insignificant decisions can be everything. And you don't know what those small, insignificant decisions are going to be. Oftentimes, the thing that you think is going to make the change isn't. So all you can do is just keep on showing up, keep on working, and know, or at least hope, that whatever you do is going to be the thing that makes the biggest change. This person showed up every single day. They worked hard, and now they get to look at the fruits of their labor and be proud. And hopefully their great, great, great grandkids will look back and be like, that guy was the guy that changed it. They might not know your name. They might not know your birthday. They might not know your death date. But there will be stories told about you through the generations of somebody back then made a choice so that we could be here today. Somebody back then for your family made a choice so that you are where you are today. And you can sit there and say that that's wrong or that it's right, or they could have worked harder or less. Who cares? You need to make a choice today so that someone can look back on you without knowing your name, without knowing your story, and say that somebody did it. And you can know in your heart, in the grave, that you were the one. That's all that matters. How you feel about yourself when you're by yourself. And if you want that to be important, you want that to be good, then live to your values, work hard, and don't lie, don't cheat, don't become the kind of person that you tell yourself you want to be. Be the person that you want to be. I'm done.
Beautifully said. Beautifully, beautifully said. Oh, guys, we're going to be moving on to our win of the week. This is where we like to close out the podcast with a little bit of a win, right? And if you have a win of yourself, doesn't have to be just financial. Feel free to drop it in the comments. We love to hear and share wins of the week. For this week's win of the week, my win of the week is I recently started rereading The 48 Laws of Power. It's one of those books that I got on Audible, and I really enjoy listening to it. And, you know, I feel like a lot of people bring up the first law, don't outshine the master. And it's like, all right, that's the first law. Everybody knows that one. But I really want to memorize all of the laws and just understand them more. And the more I go through life and the more I see in business, you know, it's like, I want to really understand power dynamics and how the world works so that it doesn't take advantage of me. So that's kind of one of my win of the weeks. My second win of the week is the fact that I lost 5 pounds, which I'm really happy about. And I'm going to continue dropping some poundage, getting those lbs down, dropping some fattiness, getting a little big back sometimes, and growing those muscles. So those are my 2 wins of the week. Chris, as always, got a better win of the week than me, but let's hear it. What do we got?
So my win of the week is very exciting. As many of our listeners know, I recently moved from Arizona back to San Diego. And, you know, I talked about life transitions, and sometimes you have to make harder decisions. And one of those hard decisions is when we moved here, my wife needed to stay back in Arizona for a few months to finish out her contract, to, be the person that she committed to being, to stay with the company for as long as she did. So I'm excited to say that my wife is now fully here in San Diego with me. So we just went to the DMV yesterday, which was not a fun ordeal, to try to get everything done. We have to go back in a few weeks because we didn't have all the paperwork that we needed, apparently. But at least my wife is here. So that is just so exciting for me to not have to talk to my wife on phone and, Zoom, when we have the ability now just to see each other. So she's downstairs right now hanging out with the dogs. She's going to be taking a little bit of time off of work before going back. So I'm just really excited to have the next few weeks to travel with her. We're going to go on a few trips, spend time. Don't be afraid, people. The podcast will continue. Dominic and I will be sure that you guys are taken care of. And the Fly Crash Course will not stop just because my wife is here. So that's my win of the week. I'm super excited. Dominic, would you mind closing us out, please?
Absolutely. Well, that is a huge win of the week, and I'm super happy for you too. For this week, that is it, and that's all we have. We hope you guys enjoyed this week's episodes of the Fly Crash Course and the recap that followed. We would appreciate it if you did follow and shared this podcast with your friends and family, because it's so much better going with a friend than going alone on this financial journey. Trust me when I say that. It's so much more fun. That being said, if you guys did enjoy it, make sure to give it a like or a follow, because, we got to stay up to date. We got to boost this algorithm to push it out to as many people as possible, because I don't want a single person left in the dust financially and philosophically. Nobody wants to be in dust. That being said, I hope you guys have an amazing week or weekend, depending on when you listen to this. But make sure to stay happy, healthy, and make great choices, both physically and financially. And we'll see you guys back here on Monday. I'm Dom. He's Chris. Peace.
Later.
This video podcast is sponsored by Monzon Wealth. The content in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. We do not endorse specific products or services. Past performance does not guarantee future results. The opinions expressed are those of the host and guests, not the podcast sponsor.
It is crucial to consult with a qualified financial advisor or professional who can provide advice tailored to your specific needs before making any financial decisions, investments, or taking any other actions. If you are seeking specified help, you can reach out to Chris at monzonwealth.com.